You finish a big meal. You are full, uncomfortably full, and yet somewhere in the back of your mind, a quiet voice says, "Eat the dessert anyway. You know you are not hungry. Your stomach knows you are not hungry." But something older than both of you disagrees. That something has been running the show for 200,000 years, and it has never once heard the news that dinner is reliably available every single night. The real answer to why you do this is far stranger than willpower or discipline or bad habits. Your body is still preparing for a famine that ended for most of humanity generations ago. Think about the last time you felt truly hungry, not peckish, hungry. Your thoughts probably narrowed. Food became the only interesting subject in the room. That is not weakness. That is a very old survival circuit doing exactly what it was built to do. For almost the entire span of human existence, food was not a certainty. It was a gamble. A hunt could fail. A harvest could fail. A single bad season could mean months of scarcity. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham has argued that the ability to store fat efficiently and to crave calorie-dense food when it was available was not a flaw in early humans. It was the whole strategy. Bodies that hoarded energy when food appeared were the bodies that survived when food disappeared. So evolution built you a very specific kind of brain. A brain that treats abundance as suspicious and temporary. A brain that says, "Eat now, because you do not know what tomorrow holds." This is sometimes called the thrifty gene hypothesis, first proposed by geneticist James Neal in the 1960s. He was trying to explain something strange. Why do modern humans, especially in populations that faced repeated famine, seem biologically primed to gain weight so easily today? His answer was that the same genes which once saved lives during scarcity now work against people living in constant abundance. The environment changed. The biology did not get the memo. Here is where it gets stranger. Your body does not just crave calories when you are starving. It changes how your mind works. During the Minnesota starvation experiment conducted by physiologist Ansel Keys in the 1940s, healthy volunteers were placed on a restricted diet for 6 months. What happened to them was not just physical. They became obsessed with food. They dreamed about it. They collected recipes they had no intention of cooking. Some hoarded scraps. Some grew irritable, withdrawn, unable to concentrate on anything else. Their bodies convinced their minds that nothing else mattered. Why would starvation do that? Because a brain distracted by anything other than finding food is a brain that might die. Scarcity does not just take away calories. It rewires attention itself. Now here is the twist. You have likely never experienced real famine. Neither have your parents in most cases. And yet the circuitry built for scarcity is still fully installed and fully active, running in a world of drive-thrus, delivery apps, and grocery stores open at midnight. Your ancient alarm system for food insecurity did not get uninstalled just because food became reliable. It just sits there, waiting for a signal that used to mean life or death, and now means nothing more than an empty stomach an hour before lunch. This explains something curious about how modern deprivation feels. When you diet, when you skip meals, when you restrict food for any reason, your body cannot tell the difference between voluntary restriction and an actual famine. As far as your ancient survival system is concerned, calories stopped coming in, which means an emergency has begun. This is part of why so many diets fail, not because people lack discipline. Because they are fighting a system that was built, quite literally, to make sure they lose that fight. The body prioritizes survival over any promise you made to yourself in January. Psychologist Judith Rodin and other researchers studying restrained eating found that people who consciously limit their food intake often show stronger, not weaker, responses to food cues. More attention to food, more vivid cravings. The very act of trying to control eating can intensify the ancient alarm rather than quiet it. Restriction whispers famine, and the oldest part of the brain is always listening for that word. You can see the same ancient wiring at work in something far more mundane than dieting. Notice how much harder it is to resist a snack when it is simply visible on the counter, compared to when it is hidden in a cupboard. Your visual system evolved to flag calorie-dense food as urgent information, the same way it evolved to flag a predator's shape in the grass. Sugar and fat, once rare and valuable, still light up the reward centers of your brain as though you had just found something extraordinary. A candy bar was never meant to be ordinary. Your brain has not caught up to the fact that it now is. There is a modern mirror to all of this that goes beyond snacking. Consider how people behave during actual periods of uncertainty, not personal hunger but collective anxiety. Watch what happens to grocery store shelves at the first sign of a crisis. Watch how quickly people begin stockpiling, buying more than they need, driven by a feeling that has almost nothing to do with logic. That feeling is not new. It is the same ancient alarm, triggered not by an empty stomach, but by an empty sense of security. Scarcity does not have to be about food specifically. It only has to feel like scarcity. This is the strange inheritance living inside you right now. A body constantly running a background calculation that assumes the next famine could begin at any moment. A mind that treats abundance with quiet suspicion, even when the evidence says otherwise. You are not broken when you overeat at a holiday dinner, or when you cannot stop thinking about food after skipping breakfast, or when the sight of a full pantry gives you a strange flicker of relief. You are simply carrying forward instructions written by ancestors who could not afford to ignore the possibility of hunger. Does this mean you are permanently at the mercy of an outdated alarm system? Not entirely. Understanding where the signal comes from does not erase it, but it does change how you interpret it. That craving after a stressful day is not a personal failure. It is an old, blunt tool being used by a brain that has not been told the emergency is over. Recognizing that does not require you to obey the craving. It only requires you to understand what it actually is. So the next time you find yourself reaching for food you do not need, pause for a moment. Ask yourself if you are actually hungry, or if some much older part of you is simply doing its job, treating today like it might be the last full pantry it ever sees. Your ancestors survived because their bodies refused to trust abundance. You are alive today, in a world of endless abundance, still carrying a body that has never quite learned how to believe it.